Hi, Arnie here. Today I'm going to install a Chinese diesel heater in my vintage trailer. And while there are numerous videos out there of Chinese diesel heater installs in different coaches and trailers and van conversions and whatnot, there are very few that show installing one in a vintage trailer like our 65 Oasis that we have behind me. There are a few considerations with that, some of them being that you might not want to have a vent sitting in plain view where you can see it, because that will take away from the vintage look of the trailer itself, which I'd like to try and preserve as best I can, especially on the inside. The reason I want to put one in is because there's no heat in this trailer. And here in BC on the west coast of Canada, the camping season is wide enough that if you have heat in your trailer, you can take advantage of it and extend it a little bit. So let's go inside and see what's involved. Hi there, welcome to the inside of my trailer. So today I'm going to talk to you about installing a Chinese diesel heater in my vintage trailer and some of the things that I considered along the way. I'm not going to post a link to the site on Amazon that I bought my heater from, for the very simple reason is that that link is probably going to be dead in about 2 weeks. Well, probably not, but you know what I mean. Like if you're looking at this video a year from now, that link may no longer exist, and so it's not going to help you. But what I will say is to consider a few things like I did prior to making my purchase. I wanted a 5 kilowatt heater, so that's what I was looking for. And I was looking for the heater to contain certain components, some of which I've laid out on the table here, and I'll explain why those matter. But one of the key factors that I was considering is location. If there's something wrong with the heater, I want to be able to return it. And so if it came from China, that means, you know, I'd make the purchase, it might take a month to get here. And when it does get here, if I find that there's something wrong with it, returning it is going to be a hassle. But if you look on Amazon or on eBay, you can generally see where the item is shipping from. And a lot of these manufacturers have North American warehouses throughout Canada and the States, and in this case I ordered my heater and it literally arrived the next day, which is perfect because if there happens to be a problem with it and I need to return it, I have a local warehouse that it can be sent back to and exchanged with, and so there won't be any hassle there. Imagine trying to send it back overseas. I could be waiting months for something like that to be sorted out. Some of the other considerations that I made are about what was in the box itself. I wanted a specific type of fuel line. There's two types really that come shipped with these. There's the hard plastic type, and there is a green, about the same color as this or the seat that I'm sitting on, a green tubing that is quite common, and I wanted this one. The reason being is because the hard plastic doesn't expand and contract when the little fuel pump sends out its very precise metered dose to the heater itself. If you have the green plastic line that's a little bit softer, it has a tendency to expand and contract, and the longer the line is, the more expansion and contraction you can get, and it can mess up your heater. It'll start throwing error codes, it won't run as efficiently, whereas this line shouldn't give you any problems because it is very stiff and non-forgiving. It won't expand and contract with the pulses of the fuel pump. I wanted a certain type of thermostat controller. That was another consideration that I made when making my purchase. The thing about this one and others like it, there's a blue one that's like this one. There's a black one that's more square, but also feature-wise it's very similar. It's fully programmable, and I wanted to be able to do that, program it, but I also wanted it to come with a remote. because if I'm sitting outside my camper at nighttime and my wife and I are planning on going to bed in half an hour, we might want to warm things up a little bit. And so while we're sitting by the nice toasty fire, we can just reach into our pocket and hit on and turn the heater on, and so the camper will be warm when we get in it, which is nice. Other things to consider when you install your heater. I'm going to talk about this. This is the exhaust pipe, by the way. I'm going to talk about why it matters. Why you don't want any bends in it like this when you install it, why it has to be angled in a certain way. I will go over that. This is your air intake, and this is just a little foam filter in here to collect dust and bugs which you don't want going into your heater. But I'll explain how and why this needs to be installed and the best way to do that. This is your muffler. It's a pretty straightforward little muffler. If you look through it, it goes straight through. And surprisingly, looking at different tests that have been done, you would think that the mufflers that don't go straight through and kind of come in and go in a bit of U-shape inside there might be quieter, but they're actually not. There's a fellow in Australia, and I will put a link to his site, who has done a very, very extensive breakdown of these Chinese diesel heaters, everything from fuel systems to electronic systems to installation to the everything. It's like an 18-part series. He really goes into detail, and he tests this muffler versus another muffler, and this one actually proved to be the slightly quieter muffler. You wouldn't think so, but it does. I'll also explain why this little hole in the bottom, which is not a defect, is important. Has to do with condensation. And I'll talk about the heater itself. This is a 5 kilowatt heater. They come in 2 kilowatt, 5 kilowatt, and 8 kilowatt sizes, although by all the tests and comparisons that have been done, there's very little difference between the 5 kilowatt and the 8 kilowatt heater, especially dimensionally. From a dimensional point of view, they're pretty much identical. What is identical across the board, whether it's a 2 kilowatt, 5 kilowatt, or 8 kilowatt, is the mounting area itself. This is going to mount like this on the floor of my camper. And this is your exhaust, this is the fuel intake, and this is the air intake. And it will mount on a plate over a round hole that I'm going to cut in the floor. And the mounting is virtually identical on all of them. What you will notice a difference on the 2 kilowatt heaters is the air intake and exhaust are smaller. This is 3-inch. And on the 2 kilowatts, it's about 2.5, 2.25 inches. It's smaller, it's physically smaller, which means that the heater has to work a little harder to produce the same amount of heat. And having to work harder translates into just a little bit more energy required, which, if you're boondocking in a trailer, you know that conserving energy is vitally important. And tests have shown that this version, the 5 kilowatt version, when they first start up, they're going to draw about 10 amps. And that's only for a couple of minutes, and then they'll throttle down to a nice, quiet hum. And we'll only be drawing maybe 1 amp at most, 0.8, kind of in that neighborhood. So that's very little draw. You can get a lot of time out of that, and certainly a simple solar panel can offset the amount of power requirements that it's going to be drawing. I'm not saying run it straight off a solar panel. You need to run it off your coach batteries, but the solar panel will be able to keep things topped up compared to how much the heater itself is going to be using. Whereas the 2 kilowatt heaters, when they're throttled down and they're idling along, they're running at about 2 amps, maybe a little bit higher. And so that's the reason why I chose the 5 amp over the 2 amp, is basically to conserve energy. The last thing I'm going to talk about here and on the table in front of me is the fuel tank. The tank that comes with these is a 10-liter tank. You'll see that I have the cap here, or pure like this one. It's a vented cap. There's a tiny little pinhole here, meaning that the fuel will be able to escape from the tank without building up any vacuum pressure within the tank. Helps things flow. It's got a little boss here or here where you can mount your tap into it with a little fuel nipple that they send you. I'm not going to be using this, and the reason is that there's no way that I could put this anywhere on the outside of the trailer. And you do want it on the outside. You never want to put this on the inside of your trailer. It's diesel. It's not highly combustible. That's not the issue. But diesel stinks, and when you're filling the tank, it's invariably going to spill. And even just a drop in your trailer will stink, and you don't want that. You want it on the outside of the trailer. But there's no way that I could put that on the outside of my trailer anywhere without it being obvious. So I have a different solution for that, and I will show you that in an upcoming video. So with all that out of the way, let's get on to the actual installation considerations. Okay, thanks.